The ANC's support base is under threat from the EFF. That's according to two political analysts who say the economic freedom fighters' pro-poor policies are likely to appeal to the masses. At least 50,000 people attended the EFF's manifesto launch at the weekend. The party believes that by nationalizing banks, mines and land, it can guarantee free education up to tertiary level. Well, joining us now in the studio is Advocate Dali Mpofu from the EFF. Dali, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning.
Just to clarify, do you have a title at EFF? Are you like legal commissar? These terms are being used?
Justice and Special Projects.
Justice and Special
That's my portfolio, yeah.
Okay, just to understand that. Now, how did Tembisa go in your view at the weekend?
Well, I must say it went very well, beyond our own expectations. I actually lost a bet on the numbers because our official people who are scientifically trained to do these things put the numbers at 62,000. And I lost a bet because I had thought it would be more modest than that.
Yeah, certainly at the stadium, they're packed. Now, why should I vote EFF?
Well, because Dan, for the first time, you have a party that openly says that it is going to drive development by starting right at the bottom. We have put our colors to the mast. The other parties say that you must enrich people at the top, you must take care of investors and so on, and then by some magic, those riches will trickle down to the people. We don't believe that will happen. It could never have happened. It has not happened in 20 years. We think that development must be upwards. For example, you have about 16 million people relying on social grants now. You must have a government that is determined to reduce that number progressively rather than to increase it, because you now have more people on social grants than people in employment, which is a dangerous situation.
Now, some people would say without investment in South Africa, you will not create jobs.
No, absolutely, that is true. But investors, want certainty. And that is why we gave such a detailed manifesto, so that investors must be assured, for example, that when we talk about nationalization of mines, we're talking about 60%. There will still be 40% where the private sector can play and derive their profits. Because I don't know how to extract platinum from the ground. So you need a partnership. The issue here is to have government control, so that that money can be used for social development, as you have put it in your introduction.
But how will a state under the EFF, let's say the EFF were to win the elections, raise the money or get the money to buy 60% of existing mines? Because they are not cheap.
Yes, well, but you don't buy them over one day. Even the people who own the mines, the private sector, some of them are still buying them over, there are arrangements that can be made for that to happen over a number of years. The issue here is that you must be able to sit at the table and be able to say how the profits must be distributed, what housing schemes must be there for the workers, what are the salaries of the workers, and you can't do that except by the means of ownership.
Okay, you are promising to double social grants, for instance. You are promising to raise the salaries of public servants.
Yeah.
Now you are also wanting to buy mines and buy some private-owned property over time. That's a huge money that you look at the state budget. How is EFF going to manage such a big state budget?
You see, with manifestos, I think people sometimes misunderstand and think that when you say these things, they're all going to happen on the 8th of May, the day after the election. That's not what we're saying. Some of these programs we're going to do over 2 years, others over 3 years, others over 5 years, others might even take longer than that.
But the level of impatience that we currently see in the country, look at the service delivery protests that we've seen, will that assist EFF?
No, but you're quite right. That's exactly why we think that starting at the bottom is important. So that if you can say, for example, look, we're going to eradicate the bucket system within 2 years, and you do it, then somebody else who's got a housing problem will say, okay, well, they've done this. If you say no children will be learning under trees in 2 or 3 years, and you do it, then someone else who has a longer term target will see. But the problem now is that people don't see any delivery. They have been sitting in the same conditions, no water, no toilets, and so on. So they think, well, how can I trust these people when they talk about 6-7 million jobs, or all these figures that are bandied about by the other political parties? For example, I don't understand why people say they can deliver 6 million jobs in 5 years, when this economy has only produced 5 million jobs in 20 years. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Do you think the South African economy will grow under a state where there's nationalization?
Yes, we do. And that's a very crucial question, because the question of economic growth actually is the most important thing. So that is why our manifesto painstakingly explains where the money is going to be derived from. Because we think that, for example, the so-called National Development Plan, by its own admission, can only be delivered if there's 5-6% growth. Currently, the growth is 2%, which means those promises that are made against that National Development Plan are empty, because that growth is not
socialist, you've got a socialist flavor about the EFF. Do you think the socialist policies of the EFF would foster higher growth in South Africa today? I mean, look at what's happening globally.
Oh, certainly, because remember, under a socialist type of arrangement, there will be more participation. For example, even this issue of increase in salaries, that is spending that will stimulate economic growth, because those people who are sitting idling, doing nothing, will now be spending, buying fridges and so on. Somebody has to produce those fridges. In other words, the economy gets stimulated by social spending. Yeah.
Okay, let's just get to the nitty-gritty of the election on the 7th of May. What are you targeting? We hear other parties say we're targeting so many provinces, we're targeting such a percentage. I mean, realistically, do you think EFF can get a majority vote in South Africa on the 7th of May?
Yes, all things being equal, of course, then there are issues of time, there are issues of funding and resources and so on. But, this message is targeted to the majority of South Africans. There's no doubt about it, because the majority of South Africans are poor, working class, and that's our target. So however long it's going to take, the majority of the people will realize that the trickle-down nonsense will never actually eventuate, and they will want a situation where they participate, where they stimulate their own growth.
Very briefly, would the EFF, after 7th of May, if you don't get a majority vote, go into a coalition with other parties to form opposition to whoever will be the ruling party after the 7th of May?
No, we won't go into coalitions for opposition. If we go into coalitions, it will be for ruling. And that will be based on anyone who's prepared to accept our 7 cardinal pillars, which are outlined in the manifesto. And so you can never rule out coalitions, but we are saying the precondition is those cardinal pillars which are not negotiable. And they include land expropriation without compensation, nationalization, free education, and so on.
So coalition for ruling, not coalition for opposition?
No, we're not interested in opposition.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Advocate Dali Mpofu from the Economic Freedom Fighters. We bring you more local news and international news after the break here on eNCA. Stay with us.
Know more about your world. eNCA.com